On this episode of the Propaganda Report, information overload, emotionalism, and the search for truth in our pseudo-reality. Here's Monica Perez and Brad Binkley.
So this is episode 13 of the Propaganda Report, and I'm wondering if we should skip 13 like Trump skips the 13th floor. Actually, Trump skips like 10 floors in a row to make the higher floors look like they're higher and sell them for more. Anyway,
does he really?
Yes, he really does it. So how are you doing, Binkley?
I'm good. How about you?
Good. How was your weekend?
You know, I survived. I didn't get assassinated.
You know, there some people live like that. Some people live in fear.
I like to survive. I like to claim that I just survived an assassination attempt. I'm trying to catch up to Castro.
My mother always says, and a lot of people say this, that if Trump wins, they'll just kill him. Which, you know, it's kind of a paradox, because if they kill him, I'll be like, oh, yeah, maybe he really was going to change things.
That's what it takes, right?
That's what it takes to prove you're legit. Is to get, somebody wrote me a message, a comment saying, I don't think he was talking about us, but he said, you got to be careful laughing about stuff that's so serious. But I'll tell you, I mean, my mother gets all upset because I'm always so serious on my WSB show, super serious.
Well, you're not super serious all the time. You laugh at a lot of stuff.
I know, and then so I
you have a real dark sense of humor.
I try to cultivate the lighter side in a dark way, and then people get bent out of shape about that. What do you think? What's your opinion?
I think that, I don't think we should. I think we should laugh at anything, pretty much, as long as it's not mean. I don't think people should be.
No, I am not mean, but I have to say.
Oh, you're not mean at all.
I get super. I get really depressed. Like I have like so I have a show, the Monica Perez Show on WSB, which is coming back after football season. Saturday, December 3rd is my first show back, and you, Binkley, are with me on the air producing that show. And I get so, before you were on the air with me, when I was just kind of always in this, I had my head in this stuff by myself, it was very depressing. And there were numerous times where I was moved to tears about what an awful state of affairs things are in. And you really people can't listen to that. It's too hard, and it's too hard to live it. So I've decided to lighten up with your help. Thank you. And I also think, even if the Trump thing is a complete psyop, like if they really, if this was plan A, even if that's true, I am finding it fascinating in a totally not judgmental way. Like, I'm not even like, I hope he fails. I would definitely not hope he fails. I hope there are silver linings to this, but I feel like we can really, it's going to be interesting to watch no matter what. Like, you don't have to be dark, and I think we're going to have some good laughs over this administration.
If he's president, if he makes it that far and he stays in office, then there's definitely going to be a lot of humor. Can you imagine the president tweeting out how fat Rosie O'Donnell is?
Oh my gosh. I'm so glad you brought up his tweets. There was a tweet in the newspaper, the Wall Street Journal reprinted one of his tweets, and it said, and I went online to just copy and paste it so I didn't have to retype it. And in the online article, this does not happen too often, the online article deleted that paragraph. So I don't know why, but the tweet was this. It said, it was an article about Chuck Schumer, and it repeated a tweet that Trump said, I have always had a good relationship with Chuck Schumer. He is far smarter than Harry Reid and has the ability to get things done. Good news. And then Bill McGurn, another writer in the Wall Street Journal, the next day referred to that tweet as, see, Trump's a nice guy. But to me, that tweet was not un-PC. It was just totally rude. Why would you? I would never. You know what I mean? There are disinformation agents who run popular websites, and I hesitate to name them by name, not because I don't want repercussions, but it's so rude and to just start taking shots at people. I don't understand. That was such a gratuitous shot, and that's
I think
what
that's what they're in the business of doing all the time.
Who?
the politicians. I mean, they don't all do it quite as bluntly
radio
as
hosts
Trump
are
does.
supposed to also, but I don't like it. I don't think that's the point of. I think that plays exactly the opposite.
Right.
If you,
it's a lot of the fake fighting, really.
And the un-PC, like, look, I'm sick of being PC. It's like, okay, but it's,
Rosie O'Donnell just ate a truck.
yeah, I mean, it's not un-PC. PC is not etiquette. Politeness is separate. PC messed up truth, not manners. You know what I'm trying to say? Do you understand?
Yeah.
Don't call people stupid. It's not nice.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, you can point out that Harry Reid is a criminal, and you can support that because there's evidence of it.
But you've also got to emphasize how much he smells. How
Does
bad he looks. I don't know. That's just I get what you're saying though. You'll listen to Alex Jones, and it's like a serious question will be, now have you ever smelled like a weird sulfur smell around Hillary Clinton? Coming from Hillary Clinton, have you ever smelled her smelling like sulfur? He'll ask that as a serious question.
That yes, that was actually one of the people who I don't like to call out by name because a lot of people like his show. I
like his show. I think he's funny.
But the thing is, to me, it discredits a lot of what he has to say, like that famous Piers Morgan show that he was on, which you and I disagree about. But Larry Pratt of Gun Owners of America ripped Piers Morgan. What was his name? Piers Morgan? What was
Piers Morgan? Yeah.
Is that his name?
Yeah, he supports Trump. Or he called Trump his friend. I don't know if he supports him.
No, wait. Is that the guy who was on CNN, the British guy who got fired?
Yeah, that's the guy.
So he had the gun guy on, and the gun guy made Pierce look not stupid, but he lost. He lost the argument. And then the next time he has Alex Jones on, and Alex Jones starts, I almost feel like he jumped up and down on the chair like a monkey, like he didn't do that. But that's like the visceral impression I had. And I do not think it served the gun argument well to be delivered in an irrational way. Same thing. I get I've been having.
What I thought about that was that Alex Jones served the Second Amendment better than the other guy, because if you look at the amount of hits, Alex Jones has that shows 4 million, and the other guy has a couple 100,000. And I watched both of them, and you and I both we're into that, and we have the understanding that the perspective that the other guy was presenting it from, we understand that. But I think people who are new to the argument would get bored with what he was saying and would immediately turning it off.
So I'm gonna rethink how I approach the world, because I look at those two side by side, and I'll put them in the show notes, the two videos. I look at them side by side, and I feel exactly the same as I felt when I saw Trump and Hillary side by side. It doesn't matter. And I obviously I'm wrong. So I have to revisit. And that actually is something else I want to talk about today. I look at them side by side, and I think the one that's bombastic and I'm going to use the word histrionic, even though that was a later in life word. I should probably stay away from the words that I have to look up. But
what does that mean?
Histrionic is like making drama, just being overly dramatic, hissy fits or whatever in public. Right. Because I don't want to call them clowns. I've heard people call Trump P.T. Barnum, and
P.T. Barnum was brilliant.
Yeah, and
he was a brilliant public relations person.
Definitely got it. Yeah, and Alex Jones, like a circus hawk, whatever.
Alex Jones is very good at that. He's very good at commanding attention.
And so I've always given the benefit of the doubt. I mean, I grew up in, there was the uneducated white middle class. Like, my father was a truck driver, my mother was a waitress, and then a practical nurse. I went to community college, and I did end up at Harvard and Stanford, but raw intelligence is not, like getting good standardized tests and being able to access those places based on that. It doesn't really separate me from my family who didn't do that stuff. We're still capable of critical thinking. We have intelligent conversations. And, if we sit around the Thanksgiving table, people are not swayed by the circus hawker. And that actually discredits people to us, so I was just read it wrong. I looked at the world and I thought, who is going to prefer the bombastic stuff? Who is going to prefer the screaming and yelling?
Well, the Alex Jones stuff, I get what you're saying there. What worked about what Alex Jones did in that interview was whether he had a bunch of penises drawn on that piece of paper or he actually had FBI statistics on that paper, it doesn't matter. He had a piece of paper that he was pointing at and shaking up at the camera saying, it's on the FBI stats, FBI statistics, look it up. and when you do that, when you hold that, he was giving authority to it by lending it to FBI statistics. So anybody who's watching it, even though he's grabbing their attention by being bombastic, and then he's saying, I have proof of it right here, and that's going to compel people to further research.
Did you ever see The Manchurian Candidate or read the book?
No.
The original movie? Oh, you've got to see that. You, of all people, have got to see that.
Is Reagan in that?
No. Frank Sinatra was in it. Angela Lansbury was in it.
Angela Lansbury?
Yeah.
Was she? Was it Murder, She Wrote?
Yes, it was the pilot for Murder, She Wrote. So the thing that it was supposed to be inspired by McCarthyism and also MK Ultra, which was a real project where they mind control experiments by the CIA, where they would say, she held up a piece of paper, she said there are 55 communists in the State Department, and then somebody else would say, prove it, and then she would rattle off a couple of names, and they would say that's only 14, and then they'd argue about whether there were 14 or 55 communists in the State Department, but she never had to prove anything because she got it just by identifying it, holding up a piece of paper, saying there was a certain number. She got people to just assume that there really were some communists in the State Department.
Right, yeah. I mean, the whole thing is why would he say that it's FBI statistics if that's not backed up? I mean, it gets that the assumption is believed.
Right, and you would see with the Hillary and Trump debates that they would both say, check your facts, check your facts. They would say opposite things and say, check your facts. And you can find opposite facts, like for the economy.
You can find fact-checking sites, 18 million different fact-checking sites, and they're all fake news, is what I believe.
Yeah, I believe that. Most of them are just debunking, but I'll even say government statistics on the economy or the statistics cited. I can read the Wall Street Journal for a week and find statistics that say unemployment is increasing and unemployment is decreasing.
Right. It's all about the context and scope.
That's why Mark Twain said lies, damn lies, and statistics, because it's such you could so lie that way. Polls, I would add polls to that. But
99% of people that I personally polled agree with me.
Out of this sample set of 2, you have 100%. So, but here's the thing about the and I hate to talk about people in groups, uneducated, educated, my family, SAT scores. I just hate to categorize people like that, which is another problem I have with how this whole movement is being depicted. And it's what I've hated the whole time, that they're talking about populism and this group of deplorables wants what's theirs. And I guess it exists, I guess that's real, but I just feel I think I had more faith in the reasoning power of just the people I talk to in my everyday life, educated or not educated, really, I feel have good instincts. They know right from wrong. And I'm just surprised that the histrionic stuff, the clownish stuff, like the Alex Jones versus the Larry Pratt thing, that's so influential. But it really goes to what you say about the power of the propaganda.
Yeah, and it's with the way we live today in society, we're literally, when you're not looking at the television and you're not looking at your phone, you're looking at your computer, or you're in a store and there's 8 TVs that are surrounding you, just putting messages into your head. The amount of distractions are unbelievable. Social media, Twitter, Facebook, to grab people's attention. From the chaos, it's gotten to the point where people are being so insanely over the top that it's like you're getting bombastic messages screamed at you from the left and the right all the time,
all right,
just to get your attention.
That brings me to an article I read, which I I think it's behind a firewall. I actually subscribe to the site Philosophy of Metrics. I just discovered it, and I had found a couple of sites that predicted Trump's victory and had reasons for it, had a narrative that made sense. So in my, I personally, the cognitive dissonance of thinking that after all they told us about Ron Paul could never get elected, and there's an Overton window, and everybody needs to be towards the middle, and people who are scary or whatever, unpredictable, scare middle America. All of that was so part of my social conditioning, and I didn't even realize it, that I just, the what they call cognitive dissonance, like things don't make sense at the same time in your brain, that Trump could win. I could not see it. I saw all the signs, but I could not fathom that he was going to win. So people who are ahead of me there, I'm trying to rewrite how I look at, how I evaluate, question my own assumptions. I thought I was really good at that, and maybe I was, but not good enough, because that really threw me for a loop. So people who were ahead of that, I really want to get inside their brains and see how they're thinking. And this is one of them, Philosophy of Metrics. And he wrote an article that I'm sure he won't mind me reading a quote from. I highly recommend subscribing to it, but he also has free Palm. He wrote two things, if you will indulge me. One, right off the bat, was the internet is meant to distribute mass misinformation and false narratives. And that really hit me, because I had talked about the internet reformation years ago. It was one of my first glossary entries on my website of glossaries, a glossary at monicaperezshow.com, with all these kind of terms. And I used internet reformation and likened it to when the Gutenberg Bible was first printed, when you had the printing press and could start printing stuff in vernacular, in the people's language, not just Latin. And it led to the wars of the Reformation. It led to the breakup of the church and to kings becoming the heads of the churches and all that kind of stuff.
Because of the different interpretations? Because
people felt they had access to information. They felt they could understand things, right, and not trust what they were told from the pulpit. And I thought the internet reformation was like that. But of course, the internet comes from the Department of Defense. So they couldn't really mean for it to be that way unless they really mean for that kind of upheaval. And this guy pointed out, really, it was amazing, really resonated with me, or blew my mind, really, really, is that the Gutenberg Bible, printing press, whatever, vernacular transition that led to the Wars of Reformation was intentional. That they intentionally overwhelmed the people who had no capacity to understand the deeper truths with all this information, pamphlets, BS. It riled them up. It got them to overturn the power of the church and give it to the kings. It's amazing. And
it's an easy way to divide and conquer people.
Yeah. So
like psychologically too, when you can give them, when you know people are only going to accept information from certain ideologies or certain sources, then it's just an easy way to polarize people.
And they had no ability to handle it all. But the parallels between the Gutenberg thing, the original Reformation and the Internet Reformation, were much deeper than I thought. And listen to I might have to read this. It's 2 sentences, but I might have to read them twice. Get ready. He says, perhaps this guy was trying to puzzle through, which I also puzzle through. And this is the thing. I try to puzzle through what's the internet, why they gave us the internet, are they going to take it back? Like, what's going on with that? And how I think, because I am not crazy or delusional or whatever. You can disagree with me, but I'm just telling you from my point of view, people might think I'm crazy. I don't know, but I'm not emotionally unstable. I don't read these things and think, I won't stand for that. He's blah, blah, blah. I'm not like that. I want to know the truth. And the fact that it is so hard for me to sift through layer after layer after layer of information and disinformation, the dialectics and everything, it's almost impossible for me. And it's all I do. And I try to do it with an open mind. And I smell a rat. Like, that has to be part of it. And this guy puts his finger on it. He was trying to figure that out also. And he said, man, we've just been thinking too hard about it. It's obvious what it is. And this is what he says. He says, perhaps the intent all along has been to swamp the masses with so much information that it causes a sort of cultural shutdown and avoidance of truth. Drowning out the sound of truth in the modern age would require something like the internet to work alongside the mainstream media in order to ensure that the masses never stumble upon what has been hidden right in front of them. Now, I've read this article twice already, and
I mean,
I don't
yes,
even know what's hidden right in front of me. I don't know if he's talking about some fifth dimension, the lizards. I do not know. I do not know, but
like what he describes there is exactly a perfect example of that. Is that story that was released about the NYPD saying we're going to release information that connects Hillary Clinton to Jeffrey Epstein, and then that story being so easy to debunk, and then it being on the first 10 pages of Google, and it completely blocks any real information beyond that from being discovered because it makes up people's mind before they continue searching.
And I feel like the crazy thing is, at this point, I feel like the reveal is the thing that makes it yesterday's news, like Pizzagate. I look at Pizzagate and I think, this just seems like a bunch of nonsense. Any time you have to have code words, I can't deal with that. I can't. I know pedophilia exists at the absolute highest levels. There's just too much evidence, too much personal testimony, too many cases. Sandusky and Jimmy Savile and the 140 dossiers in Thatcher's.
Now they banned it from Reddit. Is that the case?
They what?
Didn't they ban it from Reddit?
The Pizzagate
recently?
stuff? Pizzagate or what?
Yeah, they've been taking a bunch of the forums down.
So Pizzagate is, just for people who don't know, John Podesta, the campaign manager for Hillary and who's also been in government for a long time, supposedly is communicating on Instagram or other people in this whole thing. A lot of the evidence is like code words used over Instagram. I never use Instagram. I don't even have an Instagram account. If I was a high-ranking pedophile, I definitely would not say, how do I procure little boys? I think I'll blast it out on Instagram.
I think Instagram's probably the site that a pedophile would use, honestly.
Oh, well, look, I believe I'm going to ask you why in a second, but my point is just that they send it out. It could all be true, but I've already dismissed it because it's in the public eye. If it's in the public eye, I don't believe it. And how can you get anything that isn't delivered to you through the glowing boxes, through the TV and the computer? It's all being blasted at you from the glowing boxes. I have to discredit all of it, But why Instagram for pedophiles? Why is that the site of choice for pedophiles? I
don't know much about Instagram.
In your personal experience. But you know a lot about pedophiles.
It seems to be something where I don't want the reputation of knowing a lot about pedophiles, by the way.
I'm just messing with you.
Instagram just seems to be where younger people post racy pictures. It's something that people that are a lot younger use, like high schoolers. But
Podesta is not a lot younger. I mean
they would use it because I think that would be where they would look around, and that would be like, and it would be the last place that a high-ranking official would go to is Instagram.
Yes, I see that stuff. And funny enough, I think my daughter ran into something, not on Instagram, but on another kind of site like that, which I thought, with all like my nanny proofing and stuff on our electronics, that nothing could get through, but they do kind of weasel their way into exactly the kind of sites that, I wouldn't be surprised if they're on these little games that they play, like Penguins or Animal Jam or whatever, like the games that kids play with each other online that are supposed to be really pedophile proof, is exactly where the pedophiles want to go and set up their little fake account.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. But in any case, the fact that it's out there, and this is why my mother says to me, like, everything's fake to you. And I think I'm ahead of her because everything is fake. But now I'm like, if everything's fake, then anything I latch onto was obviously there. I'm not, anything that appears just once, which may be truth, I have no way of verifying it. So I can't.
There's a fine line between fake and reality, though. It's a pseudo environment. It's what Walter Lippmann labeled a pseudo environment is, and you've talked about this a lot. It's there's the reality, there's the real world that we go out and we experience things firsthand, and we develop perceptions and experiences that way. Then there's the pseudo environment, which is how our beliefs about the world is constructed through the various media that we take in, not from our firsthand experience. And that pseudo environment in turn creates these self-fulfilling prophecies that creates aspects of a real environment that was created.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. What you're saying is so funny because the next I actually wrote down so I would not forget under this that quote I just read you, my reflection, which was this. I wrote that I used to be able to. I'm just telling you that I wrote it down because you're saying you like took the words right out of my mouth, and I can prove it. That I used to be able to consider the possibility of coincidence and take events and facts as information to plug into and round out my worldview. But now I'm stuck trying to decipher false flags from reality, and I can't take any of that stuff to round out my worldview because I don't know what's true or what's deliberately misleading. So for me, I'm in this. So now I'm just speaking off the cuff, but I look at it and what I want to do is read the news and become better educated and say, this is what happens, but when you see something like these cops getting shot or whatever are up 650% from last year, right? That's people want to tell me that that's because there's this meme out there and Black Lives Matter is getting people mad and that's what's happening. That's just not true. I mean, these things are false flag operations. Whether they really happen or they don't happen, I don't know. But the information I'm getting out of it is that it is fake. And I know that because you can investigate any one of these incidents and you will also find that there are too many contradictions.
Right. And back throughout history, in fact, I told you in one of those books I was reading, the same type of headline in the form of a slogan is used in 1930 Chicago to also create civil unrest. Communist propaganda. Communist propaganda, using slogans and carrying protests under the guise of police brutality. Same type of thing where it's like 650% cop shootings up or whatever the headline was. Back in the 1930s, another similar form of that is being posted on a telephone pole. Police brutality rising substantially. It's the meme of police brutality versus minorities is one that is really it's been around for a long time.
It's the classic dialectic. It's a dialectic that's been used and reused. And by dialectic, I'm not sure if I remember as an adult after all my education, still not knowing, somebody just using the Hegelian dialectic, the word to me when I was an investment banker after business school, that I didn't know what it meant. So I will just say it's this idea of the thesis. I've explained it before, but it bears repeating. The thesis and the antithesis. So the idea that you have like cops are killing minorities. And then the antithesis, which is minorities are killing cops. And then what the synthesis is, everybody's killing everybody. We need to crack down. So there are these dialectics all around the world. The clash of civilizations is a dialectic that was created by Samuel Huntington and Bernard Lewis to define this Islam against the West, Judeo-Christianity on one side and Islam on the other side. And that's the 21st century dialectic. And the synthesis will be one world government or one world religion or whatever. But even if there are kernels of truth in all of this, and there's always a kernel of truth in it, it's put on steroids by the powers that be in order to bring it to crisis level so that people will accept a resolution that they wouldn't have accepted if they didn't identify a paradigm shifting crisis, a crisis that changes how you think about the world. The paradigm is how you think about the world. So, but here's what I want to say is that ask you. So I look at the news and I see 650% rise in the cops. That gives me insight into how the controlling powers work, but it does not give me insight into the zeitgeist, the spirit of the times, to translate it literally, the zeitgeist. So I want to understand, I wanted to be able to tap into what got Trump elected if that's really what happened. I really don't know if how insane election fraud is. I really, at this point, I just don't know. But I understood Ron Paul, the Liberty Movement. I understood the Tea Party movement because that's where I come from. My mother was a Tea Party. I'm a Ron Paul supporter. I get that. It's principled, it's logical, it's our tradition, it's our culture, and it's moral, and it's effective. So, but this populism thing, I feel, is being put on the people who I know, the people who I met marching against Obamacare, who are in the Tea Party or in the Liberty Movement. I can't identify to this group at all, and I don't identify them personally. I don't know them. So it's hard for me to understand what the real zeitgeist is, because all of the media is soaked in this propaganda and this idea that they want us to have. And all I can gather is what I gather in my own world. And this is not a reflection of what is in my world. I know Trump supporters. I'm not saying that. But the crisis that's being, the Trump phenomenon is being attributed to is this populism, this people are out of work who want a piece of the pie from the government on the right. It's a phenomenon that seems completely fabricated to me. You know what I'm saying? And is it, or how do you put your finger on the pulse of what's going on?
Well,
how do you do it?
I think that a lot of it, I'm not saying that there's not people that aren't struggling like that. I think that there are, just like there are things going on with police shootings and whatnot. But I think that the zeitgeist is amplified based on what exists to a certain extent within some groups that are feeling oppressed or feeling down, is finding some sort of pain that exists. It's real, that it might not be as big as it comes across in the media, but then it's taken by the media. Like the whole idea that right now cops and black people are at war, that cops are going around shooting black people all the time. Like the idea that that's going on all the time everywhere has been put into the minds of a lot of people, but it's not true at all.
It can't be true, or they wouldn't be faking them.
Well, exactly.
There's plenty of police brutality, but it's probably, and also people hating cops, but probably those issues are not as clear-cut injustice every week where
right. you
could actually garner riots or gin up riots everywhere.
Here's what the media does, and I've talked to a lot of people who believe that stuff is going on all the time everywhere, and I asked them, and I said, have you experienced it personally? Have you seen it personally, or talked to somebody who experienced it personally? Or is your opinion based solely on what you've gotten from the news sources that you trust? And the answer is the news sources. And what they do is the news doesn't report what's normal, what's going on. They don't report the real world. They report the rarities, the sensations, the sensational thing. But because they report the sensational event, which is then blasted by every news network over and over and over again, in our minds, because we're getting so much of our information from these media outlets, that becomes what's normal. So the rare event, or the rare made-up event, or the rare real event is being blasted into our minds, and because that's what we see instead of seeing the real world, we start to believe that this rare event is the real world. Well, does that make sense?
Yes, and it's not just that the rare event is being blasted. It's that a bunch of events, rare or not, true or false, are being shoehorned into this meme, this message. So you could list 1,000 examples. So I read the cop, there's a headline about a cop shooting in the Journal. At the beginning of the week, I was like, oh boy. And it rattled off like the 4 or 5 false flags. Like every single example it rattled off was something that I had already been like, that one's fishy, that one's fishy, that one's fishy. So, but it doesn't matter, because they'll just put like the Kate Sineley thing on the pier in San Francisco. That guy's story, the immigrant who supposedly killed her, the story just doesn't make sense at all. If you listen to him, it does not make sense. And yet it's just nobody digs into it. You can put all that stuff in those baskets.
Right, right. And those stories, the way that they're presented in a simplified fashion,
Yes.
it's a lot easier to reproduce, and it's a lot easier to give somebody a piece of information that's easy to explain, that has a good and a bad, a right and a wrong. They can then in turn spread that via social media or whoever they want, and it'll spread faster than it is to give somebody a complex sequence of facts and a lot of uncertainties.
Well,
The ability to spread that simplicity is a lot easier, so that enables them to shoehorn a message they want onto an emotional appeal. And that, I think, that in turn creates the zeitgeist from existing things that are real but maybe not huge.
Yeah.
By amplifying them in that manner, the news kind of creates a zeitgeist, which is something that you've talked about.
Yeah, and actually, it's coming together for me now that we're talking about it. In that, what it all is doing is you've talked about, and you can touch on this again in a second, about appealing to the basest instinct of the masses. That is emotionalism. The easiest way to, I've noticed, like, especially with adolescents, it's very easy to get anybody who feels like they're in an oppressed group as an adolescent, when, like, you're going through your passages, your rites of passage. If you think that those feelings of insecurity that you have are a result of you being victimized from the outside, you don't feel so bad about yourself. You are totally disempowered that way. You can never come back from that if you externalize the causes of your insecurity. But people really thrive on that, and that's what's happening on both sides. So like the Trump thing, this populism that I think is being created, is actually, it's being created, but then it is creating that. It is cultivating that within the zeitgeist, because it's saying you are the victim. Stop worrying about it. Stop trying so hard. You are wronged. And that's like why that tweet of Harry Reid is stupid. I'm like, why don't, that's just cultivating the basest instincts, making that the feeling. And it works, because that it draws out those emotions that really are in everybody, in minorities and cops and a white, uneducated, middle class. Everybody has that feeling.
That's what this book talks about too, this World Revolutionary Propaganda book. I think I told you before, it's a study. They did a study on Chicago, communist propaganda going on in Chicago back in the 30s, or post-Depression, and maybe even a little bit during the Depression. I'll have to look at the dates. But one of the things it says in there is the appeal is always, it's the other's fault. It's never the fault of the group you're appealing to. It's always the other. The pain they feel is always because of the other. And whatever the other group may be, that's who the blame is pinned on.
Yeah, but that, unfortunately, was the American experiment, in my opinion, was the opposite. It was like, in order to empower individuals, my favorites are Thomas Jefferson and Patrick Henry. You can definitely say negative things about them because they're human and whatever. It was a different time with different values, and but I don't care about their behavior. I more care about the message and the experiment that they actually instituted, more like by the Articles of Confederation than the Constitution, which really had this idea of subsidiarity, this idea of the subsidiary unit should have the most responsibility. Just push it down, push it down, push it down. So very little's at the federal level. It did not allow for the government to tax the federal government. You push it down to the states, push it down to the counties, push it down to the families, push it down to the individual. And this is the exact opposite of victimization and baseness and feelings of insecurity and blaming groups and even identifying groups. It's all about personal responsibility. They thought that human beings could handle it. And I would say if you look at the 19th century, they could handle it. There was an enormous growth in ingenuity, entrepreneurship. There was the price level was absolutely flat, and wealth inequality was actually less. Like, there was a better, people at the lower levels could pull themselves up very quickly. So I think that the human beings can be, you can cultivate and set up the incentives and a system for the nobility to emerge from the regular people. But this kind of thing makes me wonder if there isn't always just going to be this power group that exploits our innocent, good, hardworking,
right.
ethic.
And speaking on something you just said a second ago as well, is that I think the number is 7. I would have to look again, but the amount of information, like new information that we can hold in our brains at one time, I think that's why phone numbers are 7 numbers.
I was going to say, I know that's why phone numbers are 7.
It's 7.
For sure,
so, back in the 18th, 19th century, while there still was a lot of stimulus, the amount of information that was coming at us was not even close to what's coming at us now. Right now, it's just an impossible amount of information all the time.
It's absolutely impossible.
By overwhelming, they did studies on this where it was harder for people to remember, or the study was this. They asked questions like, fish like to eat white candy, something just kind of ridiculous, right. and stuff where the answer would be no, but they would tell people that, and then they would fill people's brains with over the amount of information that they could handle, and it would exhaust their brains, and they were unable to answer those very simple questions that they were being asked up front, whereas the people who didn't have that information overload could easily answer them. So by overloading the system...
You might have to restate that, because I really want to absorb it. And if you keep
basically
talking,
the study's like this, and I don't know the exact study, so I'm not going to try to get the facts right.
Seriously, my information, this is probably why they tell me when I'm doing the radio show, I should pause more so people can digest the idea, right. Because you really do need to digest it. So you're saying that they would be asked a question in the beginning, and the people...
It'd be like 2 + 2 = 4, right? Okay. That's an easy thing. And, people would answer those questions, and then they would do another test group where they would overload people's brains with information. They would split their task. They would, have them looking everywhere at one time. And then they would ask those same simple questions. And in the group where they were overloaded, they had a very difficult time answering the simplest of questions. And it showed, the conclusion of the study was that if people's brains essentially are overloaded past this limit of being able to handle a certain amount of information, then they are incredibly vulnerable to manipulative messages.
That's interesting, because I was mentioning to somebody recently that I am incapable of multitasking.
Everybody is.
Yeah. And that's what he said.
You can't.
Possible. I used to listen to the radio. I used to like Dennis Prager, and then I realized he's just the warmongering. I can't deal with it. So I've come a long way since then. But I used to really be a big fan of talk radio when I lived in California, and I remember I would try to clean my house, just do the laundry. And I would stop to listen to what he was saying. I was like, how can I not fold clothes and listen to the radio at the same time? How is that possible? And then I realized I just could not multitask. And then there are people who say they can, but I don't think they can. You can't do two things.
You can multitask once you've committed something to your automatic processes. So breathing and driving, with your the gas to the pedal, you see the light turn green, then you hit the gas without thinking about it. Once something becomes part of your automatic processing system. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But when it's new stuff that you're trying to learn, literally the brain does not have the resources to do multiple things at once.
And it's BS. So I sit there and I try to figure this stuff out, and I'll tell you, the thought had occurred to me as I sift through. I'm so good at it. I'm fast. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. I'm just telling you, I can go. I happen to have that ability where I can just very quickly read the article and get the gist and make connections with other articles I've read. So I feel like I'm cracking the code. And I do. I can identify false flags. I can make certain predictions, as can you, based on seeing these patterns and all that kind of stuff. But I had a feeling that when I would say, oh, this is the correct narrative, and then I would find this whole cache of websites that I could explore that narrative. I cracked the code on that. This is the real dialectic. This is who's really in charge. I mean, you can really go through you can explore in depth any possible theory of who's really at the top, from the Vatican, Zionists, Queen of England, the lizard people, the
Queen of England.
I mean, like ancient Egyptian, what is it? It's like the Knights Templar, like all that stuff. You can, the Illuminati, you can go through, and some people say they're all the same. That's one big unit.
Yeah.
I don't know, but any one of those that you want to like be absolutely convinced is on top, you could spend endless amount of time exploring it. Yeah, I mean, like it's just really robust. And I started thinking, what the heck? Like, I really have no way of true, like even the Zionist thing. People talk about that, and I'll get a lot of stuff. People are just like, you have to wake up. And I dated a German Jewish banker from an old banking family whose family owned the largest bank in Germany.
Wow.
And in the 2008 crisis, he lost everything. Like the Fed bailed out Deutsche Bank, which bought his bank out for nothing, just to like not. And then he went on trial for like malfeasance, which
your boyfriend did?
He was at the time, a long time ago, my boyfriend. So I'm just saying, yeah, and I'm just saying, like, if the Jewish bankers are running the world, like, why did they abandon him? You know, like, there are just things that I can't. So I'm just saying, I'm just talking about personal experience that I have had, right? Because I can't trust the stuff that comes out of the glowing box, right? So I look at my personal experience, and I can't find the answer there, you know? And I know that going down these rabbit holes, while there are truths to discover, that's why I kind of like really old books. Although, you know, the guy who said like the entire printing press, you know, thing in local languages in itself was this way to disrupt society.
Well, that's why Lenin wanted people to be literate, is because at the time the printed word was the best form of propaganda, and if they could not read it, he could not propagandize.
Yes, and that's what explains the Obama phone. Because if you don't give poor people the phone, a smartphone, they're going to end up on top instead of on the bottom. And you know you got to keep them on the bottom.
And that's how they have access to the internet as well.
Yeah, I saw a homeless guy, you know, plugging in at some fast food restaurant I was in, like making his little iPad work. And I'm thinking, what? You know, and I was talking to some other gal who was dating a homeless guy. Whatever, it's a long story. She was dating a homeless guy who was texting her. I was like,
wait a minute.
I don't get it. I'm not kidding. I'm totally not kidding. I was just sitting at a bar, and she sat next to me and started talking to me, and I was like, it was just too complicated. Anyway, I didn't get it.
I gotta hand it to that guy. If you're homeless and you're pulling some chick, then he's up.
She was cute, super cute. I just didn't get it, and I couldn't figure out, even though it did involve firsthand information. Anyway, I'm not trying to ramble or be nebulous or like too fuzzy. I really, I'm just trying to say that I can recognize dialectics. I can see when I'm being manipulated. I'm pretty sure they're after world government, whoever they are. And I'm positive about the false flags and the propaganda and the psyops, because even if there's an underlying truth, the very contradictions in the narratives show you that you're not getting a truth. Like, maybe that's part of it, because they don't need to make this stuff so sloppy. They don't need to have shadows facing in different directions when someone's getting beheaded in the desert, you know, to show that they can't be natural light, or all the shadows would go in the same direction. That's just a ridiculously stupid error. Why are these stories so debunkable? You know, I mean, I guess I'm having an information crisis, information breakdown. I really am like, the cognitive dissonance has really gotten to me here. And Ginny tweeted to me, man, like somebody else questioning you doesn't get you down, but questioning yourself can really, you know, cripple a person.
Yeah, that's true.
And that is the true purpose of cognitive dissonance. And I'm experiencing it in the wake of this election. And I'm going to crack the code. I am going to crack the code, but the process is, you know,
keeping
it's new.
People in a state of anxiety. That's one of the goals of propagandists, is to keep the tension high, and you keep people in this constant state of neurosis of anxiety because it makes people incapable it cripples us from being able to understand things or move forward for things because that self-doubt arises, and it can be devastating.
Yeah, that's what makes me always bring up that James Jesus or Jesus Angleton, who was the counter intelligence guy in the CIA, that he was an absolute paranoid neurotic, and that was part of his job, but he just could not trust anyone ever. And it makes you wonder. I mean, I assume he could trust himself and didn't suspect that he himself was an MK Ultra subject, but even that is a possibility in those circles.
Speaking of which, Kanye West, after making some comments that were pro-Trump, gets submitted to a psychiatric home.
That story was pretty crazy. I'll tell you, there are many, many versions of Kanye's so-called rant. He was on the Saint Pablo tour, and even that expression gives me cognitive dissonance, right? Because Saint and Pablo are like two different languages. Right? Shouldn't it be San Pablo? It's like dissonance in itself. But he goes out and he makes many speeches, like 15 to 30 minutes, where he talks about the one I watched from start to finish he dissed Trump, Beyonce, Jay-Z, Zuckerberg, Hillary. He just went after all these people. And then I guess after the Sacramento show, he was working out and they went to his house. Supposedly his instructor called the cops, or called his physician. The physician called the cops. I don't know. But they went there and he was completely calm. They said he had calmed down by then. Who the heck knows if he was ever not calm. They said they were taking him to the hospital. He said he didn't want to go. So they handcuffed him to the gurney and forcibly committed him and put him under psychiatric evaluation, and his tour has been canceled. And so it wasn't like it was out of control ranting in Sacramento. This was something that was part of his program. And he was calm, and they took him away.
And they also reported that fake news sites influenced his beliefs.
Oh, I missed that. But I want to point out that this is one way to deal with the First Amendment. And I just posted, let me tell the people about our new website, which is Propaganda Report Daily, where we're going to try to post at least one each of us. We're going to try to post one article each every day, just a news story with a little quick hit, just thoughts, thought for the day kind of thing. But if you want it, the propagandareportdaily.com, I just posted that that this guy, I've been fascinated by him. Sachtleben, his name was. He was a bomb technician for the FBI during the Oklahoma City thing. And he was the whistleblower on the second underwear bomber who ended up being an MI6 agent. And there was all sorts of deep state stuff surrounding the first underwear bomber that transformed our...
That's the worst terrorist name ever. The underwear bomber.
Yeah, and they were both government agents. So this guy, who I think probably didn't want to see people get hurt after Oklahoma City, which also was fishy, had FBI background in it, that he was arrested or being investigated for whistleblowing and ended up getting a huge sentence for disseminating kiddie porn. And I dovetailed that with an article I just read in Reason Magazine that the FBI runs up to half of the kiddie porn sites on the internet, supposedly as a trap. But at one point, the trap just becomes propagation.
Because you looking at kiddie porn all day.
Right.
I mean, who's the site administrator for this thing? It's crazy.
And they're just spreading it around. And everybody, I think it's common knowledge that porn is highly addicting. So if you double the volume, which would be impossible to even fathom given the volume of porn that's already out there, but they got this guy on disseminating kiddie porn, which apparently is an FBI job title. So,
I would ask where they get that kiddie porn. I bet they're making some of it themselves.
They supposedly confiscate it and then send it out there, and that's what has people up in arms. It's like you are just basically raping these kids over and over again by having people respond to it sexually. It's really messed up. But you look at this, and this, when he blew the whistle on the second underwear bomber, that's when the Obama administration cracked down on the journalists. Remember, there was that whole big scandal about the journalist Rosen was one of them. Do you remember that?
No.
That's amazing because it was all over the news. I mean, it's amazing.
I have to do the story. I don't know the journalist's name.
It was about 5 years ago. Oh, you remember the story? Okay.
No. What was the story again? I don't recognize the name.
The story was that the government was reading journalists' emails to find out the sources for their stories and their leaks. And it was Fox News was one, I think ABC News. It was a big, big thing.
Was that the one where the former, I think, CBS reporter showed that they were hacking into her computer?
Oh, Cheryl Atkinson?
Yes.
She blew the whistle on Operation Fast and Furious and then basically got fired for that or whatever around that time. She might have, but that wasn't what the big story was. The big story was that there was this leak, but the leak, they wanted to know who leaked it. But it was an inside job. The underwear bombings were inside jobs, which is in the news. They were like, oh, well, they said no one was ever really in danger because that guy was an MI6 agent anyway. It's like, that doesn't mean no one was in danger, because the World Trade Center in 93 was also an FBI sting operation and 6 people died.
And didn't they boast about how they stopped? We had the Department of Justice. We have stopped a terrorist attack. It was one of our own people, and we have stopped our own people.
They had to say that because they wanted to cover. But that's where that CIA director, the last one, was it Clapper? James Clapper, was he the guy? He was deeply implicated in that. It was not a good situation. But the guy who blew the whistle, who probably did it because he couldn't live with himself, I'm just speculating, but they gave him way more time.
Author. He authors the 2016 World Threat Assessment Report.
Oh,
James
really?
Clapper.
Oh, I want to see that. You have to email
it's
that to me.
online.
I'll put it in the show notes. And also, if you want to see the article I posted, you can go to propagandareportdaily.com. But I'll also link that to the show notes. So like with Kanye, you think you have the First Amendment, but they don't arrest you on grounds of having said too much. That's not what the warrant says. It's like when Tommy Chong went to jail because his son was brutally and unscrupulously set up in an FBI sting. Watch the movie. It's on my website, monicaperezshow.com, a.k.a. Tommy Chong. But, it was brutal. But anyway, they said, we're going to let Tommy Chong serve time in lieu of his son, which I think should be illegal. Why shouldn't one person be able to get somebody else to do their time?
That's crazy.
And they wrote in the papers that they filed against Tommy Chong that he appeared in movies that mocked law enforcement. So he was basically jailed for a freedom of speech violation,
Right.
This is the stuff that this is how they operate. And the First Amendment is absolutely in the crosshairs, as I have mentioned before, especially because the Fifth Amendment, due process, the watch lists, where people can get rights taken away from them without a trial or
without even knowing it.
Well, nobody else would know. Oh, yeah. That's right, because I am on a watch list because some drug dealer has my name and a birthday within a couple of years of mine.
Oh, that sucks.
Totally. You don't know how many planes I've missed, so I went back to my maiden name, but in my passport and everything. Ugh, it's so annoying. So I look like a feminist traveling with my children under a different name. So, but yeah, the First Amendment stuff, that pre-crime stuff, criminal profiling, looking at your social media in order to put you on a watch list so you can't have a gun. What if they put you on a watch list for your social media comments and then you can't put up a website because you're a fake news guy? I mean, that is probably, look, can I just what to watch out for that?
Yeah.
That, I think, is a connection that we might have to revisit, sadly, in the future when it happens.
Yeah.
Because the pre-crime idea, criminal profiling, using social media, using that to take people's rights away, which abrogates the Fifth Amendment and the First Amendment. And that, I believe, if that works its way up into those people cannot get journalism licenses, we're going to have problems.
Right, and that stuff is serving multiple purposes. Along with, in the future, it's going to be any sort of site that's labeled fake news. They're trying to easily discredit. It's also working with the alt-right deplorable basket type thing, and the whole Russia demonization thing, because they're saying that basically all these fake news sites are like Russian surrogates.
You know what's hilarious, though, is that for years, those of us, I will say, in the alternative media, would call the mainstream media the fake news. Like that, there's a website, No More Fake News, which has been around for years. It's saying that you know what I mean? Like everybody thinks of the mainstream media as the fake news.
You can literally find stories on CNN, Fox, MSNBC, like, at least if you pay close attention and then you follow it up on the next couple of days, you'll find a story a day that's just completely false.
Well, how about the Egyptian Copts being beheaded in Libya? That was absolutely fake. It's still talked about on Fox News as if it were real. And FoxNews.com actually put out an article debunking it. So there's an article on FoxNews.com that talks about how it was faked with fake blood in a studio with a green screen. And still you'll hear people like Megyn Kelly refer to the Egyptian cops being beheaded, which
Let
the
me
Egyptian
say something
government
about
killed
Megyn
7
Kelly.
people that way. Go.
Yeah, it's crazy. They
In retaliation for a fake event, the Egyptian government bombed Libya and killed 7 innocent people, including children, for a fake news event promoted by
that's
the
the
fake
self-fulfilling
news,
prophecy.
which is
It creates
Fox and
violence.
CNN.
Like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
All right, Megyn Kelly the other day, like it may have been like Friday or something like that. She's been all over the place lately. Here's what Megyn Kelly did. Megyn Kelly got this haircut of she looks like the wife of the Russian in Rocky IV.
Bridget Nielsen.
Yes.
Sylvester Stallone's first wife, I think.
Yeah, somebody told me that the other day.
I told you that. You're obsessed with her. What she did, what the story is, and I'll Google it. I'll ask the glowing box. She sent him a full-sized poster of herself naked, and he decided he just had to meet her.
I wonder if Megyn Kelly sent Donald Trump one of those for all those interviews. Well, so Megyn Kelly is on. And she's being interviewed by somebody. I can't remember who interviewed her. The story was on CNN. I clicked on the story because the headline of the story was something like Trump is being delivered questions from broadcasters. And Megyn Kelly goes on to say that some of the broadcasters are play acting and that they're giving them questions. And the reason I'm bringing it up has nothing to do with whether or not that's true. That could very well be true. It's the journalistic standard that the population will accept now. That's why I noticed the story, because Megyn Kelly, when she brought that up, the person interviewing her goes, he asked about, well, how do you know this? You know, and she goes, or he asked who the sources were, and she goes, oh no, I can't tell you who the sources were. I was privy to a private conversation, so I can't. But you can just trust me. This is going on. Just trust me that this is going on. And then she goes on to talk about journalism, and I'm like, that's unbelievable, because this is somebody who had an open, whether or not it's real, had an open fight with somebody who was gossiping about this person who they've been in conflict with and offering no sources, and yet this is being put as a headline news story. This is gossip about somebody that they're in a fight with.
Yeah.
It really is, let me finish just one thought. What it really is when you watch all of these things, you see that Megyn Kelly's been on MSNBC, CNN, The Late Show, all of these networks. This is a 30-minute advertisement for her book being broadcast as a real breaking news story. That's propaganda in its purest form.
Commercials are content. It's insane once you see it. And the deeper dig into that hip hop thing, like the hip hop music and the drugs selling is like closely intertwined. Seriously, like they're it's like a marketing thing. They that Freeway Ricky Ross, you got to look into that. Where he took a crazy all the crack money and put it into Death Row, or I don't know. But yes, the commercial is the content. It's nutty, and it definitely happened because is it Harry Shearer who has a radio show, The Simpsons guy, where the Mika Brzezinski leak, the Morning
yeah.
Joe leak I've talked about before, where when they were talking what they call down the line on the commercial break. So Trump wasn't in the studio. He was talking to them through the mics, but it was off air. And she asked if she could ask this question or that question. She was referring to questions that he obviously had in front of him. Can I ask this question? Can I ask that question? And he said, nothing too hard, not that one, something like that.
Yeah.
And so obviously it happens. And I wouldn't even mind as a courtesy if you were actually trying to get somebody's ideas. Certainly if I was asking like some rocket scientist what he thought about the universe, I wouldn't mind. I think it would save some time to send them the questions in advance. But this is a different animal from that. This is, you're trying to avoid the questions the person doesn't want you to ask. Is the opposite of journalism. But here's the thing. People have gone to jail to protect their sources, like Deep Throat or whatever. Is there anything wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that, right?
It depends on what other evidence is if you can substantiate it. Like if the conclusion is based purely on a source that you cannot find.
Right. So Socht-Lieben told people about the second underwear bomber, and it turned out to be true, and lives were probably saved. So there was no reason to turn him in as a source, because it isn't like a trial where you can't have the fruit of the poisonous tree. It's like he tipped you off and you then found out the truth.
Oh,
so
yeah.
You shouldn't. Right. Okay. I just wanted to understand like the difference there. So that guy, the reporter shouldn't go to jail for not outing that guy when the story was actually true,
Yeah, no.
Okay. So now we're talking about something different, which is she is just talking smack.
Yeah, she's talking. It's a rumor. It's gossip, and that's how all news works every day. It's like, here's this horror. It's when they're trying to paint whoever they're talking about in a specific way during political campaigns or whenever. This person's terrible because of this reason. Well, why? How do you know? You just have to trust me. I'm a journalist. I'm like, what? That's not evidence.
Well, that's how the entire. I'm talking about the Journal, but Fox News also. I've seen it. All that is how they deal with almost everything. Almost everything is an anonymous source. Sources who are not authorized to comment. All this. Anytime there's a big false flag, they just go through. They spin out these narratives, and nothing is ever. Even though this information that's coming from the government. The government sources won't put their names on it because the narrative evolves to fit facts that leak out,
Right.
So now those stories absolutely should be thrown in the bin. If there is nothing in evidence, but you get an anonymous memo from the government and then you type it up and put it on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, to me, that is fake news. It's complete garbage. Even if it's true, you can't say it because you can't investigate it. You can't find, like with the France-Nice thing, where the truck supposedly told the cops that he had free ice cream for the kids, even though it was closed to traffic. And the cops, that is the official story of how the truck killed 86 people on the pier in Nice.
Yeah.
And then what they did was they confiscated. There were like 186 cameras in the area. They confiscated all the cameras and all the film. So there's no possible way to verify any part of the Nice story at all. So all of it is just anonymous memos from official government sources. I mean, this is straight out of a dystopian science fiction.
Right. And I think the problem is
the USSR.
Yeah, I think the problem is that when you actually have credible sources that you back your stories up with, you're going to get labeled Russian propaganda. And your fake news site when you do that.
This is something that this is like what I was saying before about the dialectic, and I can go anywhere. I can read anything you want me to read, and I can get a robust narrative of who's really on top, how the power structure works, and then it goes bust. This is the thing. I used to listen to RT, Russia Today. I didn't take it as gospel, but it was a good source of news, and I really liked that Peter Lavelle. I liked his guests. I thought it was interesting. It was like crosstalk or something like that. Then all of a sudden, it got so Russian propaganda, so ridiculous, just pro-Russian, whatever. And I'm not anti-Russian or pro-Russian. When they started paying lip service to this ISIS narrative and the Edward Snowden narrative as if what our government spews us is basically true, and then they were exploiting those same manufactured enemies and heroes, or whatever you want to talk about. We can get into that. If you want to investigate, just search on my website, monicaperezshow.com, ISIS or Snowden, if you want to know why I think that both of those are tools of our government when they start using that stuff. So I look at the Russian stuff is propaganda now. It is I mean, it's right. Undeniably propaganda.
I mean, they all do propaganda. They're definitely going to try to take advantage, but that makes people think that. Here's the thing: is it's this problem of either or. It's not either or.
Yes.
It's not just because Russia's doing propaganda doesn't mean that we're not. We're also doing propaganda, and we're using Russia as a way to. If people will accept that Russian propaganda is evil, this is what they did during World War I to demonize Germany. Is the United States and the British, they prevented people from discovering truths that the Germans revealed about us, and they were proven to be truths after the war because these archives were released. The way that they prevented it is they established the Germans as a demon, and anything that was an inconvenient truth. That's one of the main tasks of a propagandist, to nullify inconvenient truths. And anything that came out that was negative, they would say, oh, that's just evil German propaganda trying to manipulate you. So everything got thrown into that basket, and that's what they're doing here.
Well, how does that... Oh, okay. See, because that's the thing. This is the problem with the Russian stuff, is that it used to be a source of information for me, not because I was buying it hook, line, and sinker, but it had real facts in it, like what you're saying. And,
exactly.
And I could pretty clearly pull out the real facts from that and just trash the propaganda. But now the facts aren't even real. So it discredits itself.
Yeah, and that's the same thing with the Germans, too, is they had propaganda, but they were also delivering real facts. But if you can discredit an entire group, even the facts that they tell you will not be discovered.
But they are discrediting themselves by making it so preposterous. You know, that's what makes me crazy. That's why, like, if you go to one of these alt-right sites and they start using slurs and epithets, you know, like they can't make good points about I'm sick of on PC, and then they make a bunch of racial epithets. Yeah, right. It's like you're proving the opposite point, that it's BS.
Right. Have you seen propernaut.com yet? There's a new site that was put up recently.
No, what is it?
It's a site. I think I watched a video. I think James Corbett did a video on it. And the Corbett report was actually included as one of the fake news sites on, which is, clearly it's not. It's actually one of very well-researched websites.
What? They said Corbett was fake?
Yeah, they did. And wow. the site, I think it's Propernaut. Yeah. And they list these sites that are fake, and the site is just totally bogus. It's a site trying to explain Russian propaganda to us. That's what the site is for, and it's just totally bogus.
It's like, what's the one I think maybe is it Snopes? There's one like debunking site that debunks the stuff that's true. It's like the craziest thing. It's like sole purpose is to validate the false narratives by debunking the true ones. But Corbett, it takes a long time for me to accept a source as like being like me. Like I'm sure people feel that way about me too, but I know that I'm just trying to figure out what's really going on. And I was at a point in my mind where I was like, nothing is real. Like, I can't trust anything ever. So if somebody disagreed with me about what the real official narrative was, I was like, that person's an operative. Like that person is just giving me disinformation, because it's just maddening. So it is possible that at some like fifth level of the onion, James Corbett is seriously really a CIA agent. I do not think so, because when I listen to him, the progression of his thoughts is natural to me. And I just don't think anyone can be that deep state that they can, like, one thing that he said that was exactly what I had already thought, and now I'm thinking more than ever, is the fact that we are spending our time revealing what's really going on, playing right into their hands. Because what they want, this is like a really rabbit hole theory, this idea of the revelation of the method, where they laugh in your face, like the way Nancy Pelosi did for Obamacare, they laugh in your face about how they have total control and you need to submit like a dog, so that if people like us want to reveal the truth and the citizens are powerless to stop it, what we're really doing is helping prove to people they're powerless. It's like, are you playing into it in that way? And like, so when Corbett said something like that, I didn't say exactly that, but like, it's the natural progression of thought. So if he's not real, I can't.
Well, the Ron Paul Institute is on there also. Ron Paul Institute is on there.
Yes, and I thought about Ron Paul too, because American Everyman, who he's got excellent truth jar. He really gets to the bottom of false flags, but he's anti-libertarian because people think that libertarians play into this corporatism, this globalism, because they want to pull down the regulatory structure. And for sure, there's what I call corporate libertarians. The perfect example I wrote an article about was when Reason Magazine was, there were several things I wrote about Reason Magazine. Let's just say one, they wanted to ban GMO labeling because they wanted to protect big ag and wanted to suppress the crunchy granolas who wanted to mandate GMO labeling. But of course, the libertarian solution is let people label whatever they want. It can't be fraud. You can't have people rely on a lie, but you can't have mandates or bans on GMO labeling for a private institution. And libertarians should know that. So people think of libertarians as operatives to keep the regulatory barriers in the right places to help the corporations, and some of the libertarian stuff has been hijacked for sure.
Yeah, but this website is totally bogus.
But I thought a lot about this. Is an important thing. I shouldn't go on and on, but with the Ron Paul, I really thought about it. I had to think hard about, is this guy doing that? Because he doesn't come out and scream from the rooftops every conspiracy theory that he probably knows is actually true, because that's not his job. He likes to talk about economic principles, libertarian principles. I do not think that he is a deep state operative. I could, what do I know? You know what I mean? Like at this point, I question my own sanity about how deep the rabbit hole is. But if you can't, I think it's important to keep a grip on your ability to reason. And if they're really that fraudulent and really have a bad outcome, and I think that's on them. But if they're promoting sound moral principles, I think I think you have to just take that stuff until proven otherwise. As you can't throw it all out. That's what they want you to do. They want you to. That's why they give it to us.
A long time ago, when I found out that Santa Claus was a fraud.
I really hope that no little children are fans of the propaganda.
If we have a child who can follow the stuff that we talk about, the rants that we go on, that kid does not believe in Santa Claus.
I'm not sorry. My son is 14. He has Down syndrome. He totally believes in Santa Claus. If anybody's listening to this in my house, that would be bad. So I'm not outing Santa Claus. See,
maybe he just stopped coming to see me. Maybe that's what it is.
Because you don't believe.
Yeah. There's an extension on this website that says propaganda flagger plugin, new prop or not, Chrome browser extension. So it'll flag the website for you.
They're calling James Corbett propaganda
and the Ron Paul Institute.
Fox News.
Are you looking at the list?
No, I'm not looking at the list because it makes our communications get zippy. But
yeah, Fox and CNN, those guys are on there.
Look, I don't know. I don't know. You can disagree with people; they can be wrong. I don't believe everything. I don't agree with Ron Paul or James Corbett on everything, for sure not. And
the problem with that site is the evidence they give is not evidence, so they don't even. The only way people are going to accept it.
They probably point to true things like Corbett's expose on Giuliani and say, "Look, this guy's a nut," but that is actually sure real.
No, they didn't even do that. They pointed to a Wikipedia page that actually was kind of complimentary of this. It didn't even have any so they didn't even go to the effort to provide to skew an article or anything.
Because they probably figure anyone who actually digs in isn't going to buy their stuff anyway. So they're just doing it for someone to just eyeball it just like a list.
Exactly.
But if we have time, maybe I shouldn't go into this now, but let me just give one little nugget and we can wrap it up or whatever else you want to talk about. But when you talk about Russia, I've been trying to crack the code on what's really going on with the Trump phenomenon, not the phenomenon, but his presidency. What's this going to mean? And I kept thinking the TPP and the Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership, the Transatlantic Trade Partnership, they were going to create this big body and then plug Russia and China in later for the world government convergence thing. But this philosophy of metrics guy, when he was anticipating a Trump win, he based it on a backdoor to that, which would be turn into yourself. So when Trump said he wanted to renegotiate NAFTA, this would play right into that, because it would, if he renegotiates it, builds a big wall and then leaves the door open or whatever, like Heidi Cruz wanted to do and William Weld wanted to do. If they make this big, strong regional entity that maybe the dollar weakens, maybe we turn inward, maybe we have protection barriers and stuff like that. Maybe it has like a deindustrializing effect on the West, which needs that. If you're going to converge with the East, which is behind, you need to slow the West down. Servando Gonzalez wrote a book about that included the theory, he was Cuban, that Fidel Castro was a U.S. operative who was charged with the experiment of deindustrializing Cuba, and Castro just died. So I thought I'd bring that up. Servando Gonzalez, very interesting. Psychological Warfare and the New World Order, I think was that book. So the theory is that you get this regional unit, like North American regional unit, or North and South America maybe. Then you have China sewing up the Pacific. So China wants to, you're probably reading about right now, swoop in and take the place of the Trans-Pacific Partnership and sew up the Pacific region into a regional thing that they maybe wouldn't have wanted to go with China. But if they're rejected by the TPP on offer from the West, maybe they will go with China. And then you have Russia trying to sew up wherever, from Ukraine to Syria and all the old satellite countries, which is a theory I was rejecting. But under this new paradigm, new theory, a lot more things make sense. So what you'd really have, instead of having everything sewn up through the TPP and the TTIP and plugging in Russia and China, you actually have three masses: the American unit, the Chinese unit, and the Eurasian unit, or the Russian unit, and maybe the European unit, and you sew all those up together, and then you do have a kind of working world federation that you maybe couldn't have if it was this unipolar state, and then you had to, like, America-centered or UK, US, Atlantis' power-centered, and then plug in Russia and China. Maybe they wouldn't go for that. Is that way too big a concept, too complicated to throw out there as, maybe what's the paradigm shift?
I think it's something to chew on for a minute.
Tell me where
process a little bit.
Yeah, tell me if there's what's blurry, or maybe we should revisit it another time. But I've wanted to talk about it recently, and I wanted to throw it out there as a construct for people who are like me, trying to figure out what the heck this means, because I really don't think that this is an anything goes world where it just got turned upside down and no one knows what to expect.
Are you asking, like, so how is the Trump presidency going to play into the development of world government?
I'm saying this. I've been asking all along, was Trump plan A, was he plan B, or was he oh crap? Now, oh crap means we really have no idea what to expect, that this was just the populace took the government back, and what's happening, I don't know. Now, I think we can eliminate that as a possibility, given that he's plugging in all these insane neocons and insiders. Monday's Wall Street Journal had 4 pictures on the front of people that Trump had met with last weekend. It was Giuliani and Chris Christie, who are absolute neocon deep state insiders, if ever there were some. And then it had Wilbur Ross, who was the Rothschild agent that bailed Trump out decades ago. And it had literally ran Rothschild Inc. in New York. And then it has Ari Emanuel, Rahm Emanuel's brother, on the cover of the Wall Street Journal shaking hands with Donald Trump as being, in one of these inside meetings. So it's not the oh crap. And I don't even think now that it's plan B. I think it's probably plan A. If it's plan A, does that mean that this is a different faction, a Republican faction instead of a Democrat faction, and they're not really, does that mean there is still a plan for world government or there isn't? And I think there still may be, and that's how it would stitch up. And then the other end of the spectrum, the way I think of it is are you still going to have like the false flags, the propaganda, the psychological operations, just the same as they ever were because the deep state is forever? Is that still going to happen? I'm still pondering that, but I'm just saying, is the goal still world government? Is this a different route? Are the people involved a different faction? Do they win the battle for America's role in that world government? It's super complicated now.
Yeah. I think the goal is still world government for the globalists, and they might have to. Even if it was plan B, it's now plan A, and they put all their operations in towards making that plan happen. So whether they have to infiltrate or whether they just have to openly negotiate, they're still going to be moving towards that. They've had to make adjustments probably, but they're constantly making adjustments. So I think whatever energy or whatever forces are there, the international, the globalists are going to try to use those forces, even if it's against the will of those forces, to further their world government agenda.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think that Hillary, Trump, and Putin represent three competing factions who are competing for control of world government, or are they three competing factions who are competing for the attention of somebody above them?
Probably the attention of somebody above them.
Who is that?
I don't know.
Lizards?
Perhaps. It could possibly be. Hillary for sure she was under people's thumb, whether it's George Soros or whoever George Soros' thumb, whoever he's under, whose thumb that he's under.
Oh, this might be a good way for people to look at that philosophy of metrics site. I think he had a free article about George Soros where he talks about He dovetails this information article he wrote with the George Soros article saying what isn't being said about George Soros is leading this guy who wrote the article to believe that he's on his way out, so there are
his
factions.
60 Minutes interview from 1998. It
was making the rounds. Was that interesting?
Online, yeah. I watched unfortunately, I watched part of it while I was falling asleep last night, and I had these crazy dreams. So.
Terrible nightmares. Do you recommend? Should I watch that?
Yeah, it was pretty interesting.
I should. Let me write that down.
It shows you that he has no remorse whatsoever.
Oh, is it the one where he said the happiest time of his life was when he worked for the Nazis when he was 14?
He talked a lot about that. I don't remember hearing that. I might have fallen asleep. But he talks about how
There's a recording of him saying that.
He talks about how his business interest, the way that he manipulates markets, he's basically his job is to do that and to not worry about the social consequences.
Well, I don't think that makes him unusual. The social consequences, this is what's supposed to happen, is that capitalists are supposed to be greedy. So greedy that, and so numerous, so greed drives progress, productivity, but competition keeps the profits at bay and levels the playing field. It keeps all that stuff in check. So no one should ever be that powerful. If he says he doesn't care about social consequences and then goes and starts a revolution because he's so rich and influential and corrupt, that's terrible.
You should watch it.
If I roll the best cigarettes and sell them to people who want them, then should I worry about the social consequences?
You roll a good cigarette?
I cannot roll a cigarette. I used to smoke a lot of cigarettes, but I bought the pre-rolled ones. So although I wonder if they're better for you, because they say that pot, even if you smoke like the same amount as people who smoke cigarettes, which is hard for me to even imagine.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that it's not correlated with cancer in the same way that cigarettes are. And I wonder if that's a part of the manufacturing. Anyway, that'll probably change when pot becomes big business. I always smell a rat with. And George Soros is behind legalizing pot.
Yes.
So if he doesn't care about the social consequences, what's all his open society? See, that's the thing. He's a social manipulator. He's a social engineer. You know what I mean? He can't possibly not care about the social consequences.
Right, exactly. You should just watch that video.
I will. Sorry to go off.
He definitely, if there was any question, because some people you tell about George Soros and they don't know him, so if there's any question about whether or not he's like a good dude or a bad dude, I think it pretty much answers that question for you.
Okay, I will check it out. So we should wrap it up. I have to tell people I'm super duper excited about propagandareportdaily.com. And I want to know, Binkley, if you are fully committed to at least trying to post at least one, I'm calling them quick hits. Just take whatever the news story is that you're looking at. If you've got an interpretation from a propaganda point of view of what people should take away from that news story or watch out for, I just want to throw that up there every day for people who want to keep in touch and comment, and we can communicate that way about our thoughts. I think it's going to be fun.
Yeah, I'm excited about it, and I can do that. And you worked very hard on that site. Thank you. It looks great.
It's super fun to pick the colors because I'm a girl. I tried to make it male appealing to males, so it probably totally looks like a chick did it, but whatever. I love that stuff. I really love it. I love writing. I love talking too, but I just love writing. I love the blog. I love writing those articles and stuff. I just love it. And you read such good books. I really want you to put some book reviews up there or summarize these books. Who has the time, to read the whole book? So
right.
Anyway, there's that's fun and exciting, and it's a good place to get these podcasts as well. So if you have what to watch out for,
I'm good to go.
All right. So that concludes episode 13 of the Propaganda Report.
See you later.
Bye, Brad.
Have you had enough of hypocrisy? Have you had enough of the spitting spree? Have you had enough? Does it make you want to scream and shout? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Have you had enough of the rubber stamp? Have you had enough? The wiretap?